Good evening. I'll call to order the Smithville R2 School District Board meeting. Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mindy, would you please lead it?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first item on the agenda is 8.0. I'm sorry, 7.0, the adoption and modification of the agenda.
Okay, I move that we take 8.1.
We have a motion to move 8.1 out of consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is 8.0, the remaining consent agenda items, the regular session minutes for September 21st, 2022, the strategic planning minutes for September 29th, the supplemental pay for October, bills for October, and approval of bus transportation routes for the 2022-2023 school year. We will be discussing transportation later in the evening as well. If there's no further discussion on this, I'd accept the motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 9. Any comments from the audience? Seeing no comments. 9.2, board priorities update.
Both priorities 1 and 2 monitor all aspects of the performance and continuous improvement for standards related to MSIP 6. And number 2, facilitate the development and implementation of the 2023 through 2028 strategic plan will be shared by Dr. Cradfield in her comments. And then there's nothing new with the recruitment and retention of teachers, although that's listed. That work continues in the buildings. And then lastly, the superintendent search process, if there's anything you'd like to share.
Excellent. Yes, thank you. This evening we have with us Desiree Brown, who's with EGL, who is going to share with us some of the community feedback that we received from our initial search process.
Okay, so the day I was here, classified as community group. A long day, but it was a good day. So it's good to hear all the things people think about the community, about the school district, and the issues they face. So this first couple of pages is just summary. The rest of this you can go through if you want to see exactly what was said in each group. These were the things that came up most often. So the greatest asset in the community is that the community is very supportive. They attend the events, they show up, they take care of needs when they come about. So that was one of them. Smithville's a real small, close-knit community where you can know your neighbors, you know the people who work your store, and it just feels home. Location, close to Kansas City, you work, the lake, all the amenities around the lake. Airport's close. Location, is an asset. Smithville is a safe community, provides a great opportunity for a good place to raise your children, family. Downtown renovations occurred there, and just the strong spirit of community and all the activities that go on downtown that are planned to regularly go on. Parents are involved in the school through not just showing up, but they obviously financially keep doing stuff. They always remember the kids. And the community has a strong faith base with great churches, and there's also a lot of community organizations, service organizations, people who participate. Those were the things, most often sort of assets in the community. What are the strengths of the school district? The things that came up most often, the teachers. A lot of times people just said teachers make it happen. I heard, the kids talk about how some of the best people they know are the teachers, and how the teachers go above and beyond to help them and to build relationships, mentor them. So the schools are also small enough that the kids can participate and feel like they can participate because there's not 1,000 kids in the school, and that they can shine. There's lots of opportunities in the school, and they like having all those opportunities. The community is also proud that you don't just offer just sports activities, but you also offer fine arts, clubs, things that kids can be interested in. There's basically something for everyone they want to participate. They also, all the dual credit, career and tech ed option, next placement, and all those things that provide kids an opportunity to excel and to go above what is a basic education. Facilities, they're in great shape. I haven't seen all of them, but the ones that I see around here, they're in great shape. And we've added a new elementary school recently, a performing arts center, the Warrior Activity Center. I was going to say the workout room. I heard it called many things. And so you guys are really taking care of your facilities well, and you're continually looking at what the needs are in the district, what acquisitions you need. And then the district is having a history of having a great education system. You have high expectations, great teaching, and people want to get better. Student scores are traditionally high, and the schools usually receive pretty high ratings on the website when you're looking for housing. Smithville usually scores very high. So what would people like to see in the next superintendent? So these are the things that came up most often. They want someone that's visible out in the buildings and events in the community and community events. People want to know who the leader of the district is. They understand school finance, budget, and communicating those that financial information in a way that people understand. So that was important. They feel like, I heard that sometimes the information is given, but we don't understand. And so sometimes it's hard to do that. So, strong communication skills through listening, speaking, and in writing. Communicating as a real, authentic person that shares information openly and transparent. Visionary, being able to look out ahead and start planning for those things that are coming 5 and 10 years down the road. Ability to be approachable, build positive relationships with people in the district and in the community. Develop these positive relationships with people that feel comfortable coming up and asking questions. They want a collaborative leader, someone that's going to listen, input, use that input in the decision-making process, and that are also open to feedback about themselves and about how things are going. So they would just want somebody that does that team-based decision making. They possess a strong ethical and moral value system. They set an example, but they get out there and get their hands dirty on YouTube, fill in and do whatever needs to be done to make things work. Passionate about their job and about education, and not just about sports. I heard that a lot. But somebody that's passionate about academics and fine arts and all those kind of people. The ability to grow and mentor leaders around them, the principal as well as teacher leaders. And then support the teachers and administrators in the district, have the backs of the people that work in the district, and also stand up for the district itself. So those were the things that they would like to see in the district. Now, what were the issues they talked about? The things that they feel like the new superintendent is going to have to face, things that they would need to know. So this one came up on almost every group. The community is very opinionated, and they like to share their opinions about things. That's just the culture of the community. But they think it would be important that the new superintendent understand that community. That I can't remember what the website is. When I went, it was Henry County Rains and Waves. I don't know I can't remember what it's called. But there's been some divisiveness and there's some distrust between the community and the school. Salary schedule for teachers is lower than a lot of the districts around, and people are leaving. Some about retention, hanging on, and also recruiting high quality staff morale is an issue. The staff, they have some trust issues from themselves in the central office, and they just don't believe what else. And then the last one is for the district growing and changing. The demographics of the size of the district, and they want they just think that person needs to understand that there's the, I'll call it the regard of Smithville that is very tied to the traditions, and that's the way we've always done it. And there's new people that don't have any understanding of what that is, what those traditions are. It causes I guess. Knowing that we're growing, how do we put that together? Those were the things that came from talking. Like I said, the rest of this is just the raw data of what we said, and you go through that. There were 210 people that responded to the survey online, and I was copy and paste those in there so you see exactly the way they took it. So I did black out that they talked about in person. So if you see those reactions, they're not bringing any that already. That didn't respond. So, what questions do you have about the input from the focus groups?
So as people think of their questions from a broad hang on a minute while we get muted over here. From a broad process standpoint, Applications close on the 28th of this month. We'll be conducting on-site interviews the last week of November and then making a decision in December.
Correct.
So questions for Destry?
There are 10 copies of this. I'll give you one. Share it with however you want. So, and then one additional one I left the master copy of Karen, so she has that. If you see that, want to get additional copies out to somebody, but anyway, it's really just for you guys to kind of see what the community thinks and what their ideas and thoughts are. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Destry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great rest of the month, Marco. Say goodbye to you on November 15th.
Okay.
November 15th. All right, next up on the agenda, item 9.3, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services.
Thank you. I just have a few things on which to update the board. First, regarding INSIP, I would like to share with you what I know about our current data. Some things are concrete, some things are still a little, we don't have the exact data out yet, some we don't even have the formula. So I have been working on a few things, but I just wanted to share where we are. So under Success Ready Performance, which would be our dual credit AP classes, career technical education students who complete IRCs, we'll receive all the points for that. That's a total of 10. In regards to students taking some type of post-secondary assessment, we will receive half of our points on that because we had 30 kids who did not assess all, and that is a result of COVID and kids being online and not being here, and we weren't able to do that. So that is an anomaly in my opinion. We already have a plan to ensure that all students will have an assessment. For example, on March 7th, we're giving the ACT to our juniors, and on that day we will also host the work keys, the ASVAB, and MCC is going to come and do the active placement for students who are know that they're going to go to community college or career college. So every student will take something. And then last year, any junior who did not take the ACT took the ASVAB. So we should be in really good shape. However, our counselors have already run a report, and we have identified any seniors who are without an assessment, and we will catch them on that March 7th date. Again, this is a foundational year for these data, and we'll have opportunities to grow and improve as we move forward. For graduation rate, we far exceed the expectations there, which is wonderful. So we will receive all 20 points. We do a graduate follow-up every February of our grads from the previous spring to see where they're placed. Are they employed? Are they in the military? Are they in trade school or going to college? And we will receive all of our points for that. The CSIP is worth 30 points. We have submitted our draft and are awaiting feedback. We will have an opportunity to make some adjustments prior to the final assessment of that if we need to. I feel pretty confident that with the plan itself, with the supplementary information that we provided in the pre-planning guide, which includes about 6 pages of narrative on how we have developed our CSIP, I think we'll be pretty secure in those 30 points. We have one of our next tasks is the response to standards. There are 8 questions that we need to answer. One of them is for you all to answer. So I've given them to Denise, so she'll arrange a time for you all to explain leadership and training and things such as that. And then the others will be things that we'll address as administrators. And we'll start working on that and have that done by the middle of November. Just submitting those responses are there's no evaluation of the responses necessarily. So we will get all 8 of them. Climate and culture survey. There are 3 questions that we are required to ask on surveys to parents, staff, and students. A combination of those. We don't ask all 3 to all of those groups. We did not have those exactly in our current assessments, our surveys, so we have added them. At our most recent panorama survey, we were able to add the 1 question required of students, which is, the school system assures student voices are heard and respected. That question also needs to be on the parent and the staff survey, so we have added those to the survey that we've given in the past. Another question is, the school system provides school culture and climate data and reports periodically to all stakeholders. That needs to be on the parent and staff survey, so we have added those. And then educator teams address positive classroom learning environments. That is to be on the staff survey. So we have updated those surveys and we will launch them probably next week. Normally we do that in February or January or February, but we want to have it done before December when our evaluation takes place, so that we can honestly say that we've added that and collected that data. So we will have those out a little earlier than usual. We will receive 6 points just for getting all of our core data submitted in time, and that's a credit to Christy Gilly, who works really hard to make sure that we have all of that in, and she, to my knowledge, has never been late. So we'll have our 6 points there. For school readiness, there is a particular assessment. There are 3 particular assessments that we need to give to incoming kindergartners. We did not give that assessment. We used a different one last spring, so we will not get any of the points there, but we will make a new selection for next spring as far as our screening, kindergarten screening tool goes. So we will have all of those points from here on out. In attendance, although our attendance rate is actually very good, it's 93%. The way that MSIP calculates that is 90%, the percentage of students who had 90% attendance or better. So you can still have a 93% attendance rate and not make the threshold on that. So we're about 85% there, which is the lowest we have ever been. But again, we was another year where we were impacted by COVID and absences that way. So I anticipate that we won't have that issue going forward because that has never been an issue for us in the past. And lastly, 4 points for ICAP. That is the individual career and academic plan that each student is to have. And all the credit for getting that completed goes to Carol Noker. She worked with our counselors last year, and every student in 8th grade through 11th grade completed that through the Missouri Connections platform. It is something that is reviewed and updated annually. So it by no means, is set in stone. When a student creates it, it's able to be edited and updated. And we'll do that as we get ready for enrollment each year. But that is in place, and we'll continue to have that with our 8th graders to meet that particular criteria. As far as academics goes, we do know what our status points are. So that would be, well, we kind of know what our status points are. If you remember, they've adjusted the performance index to a continuous performance index. So in the past, if a kid was below basic, they got 1 point. If they were basic, they got 3 points. But now there's a continuum. So a kid who is below basic can be anywhere between 1 and 2.99. So in order to calculate that, I did my best guess. And so I anticipate that we will be on track, which is the 3rd level. In the green, it's a good place to be. In ELA, science and social studies, I predict that we will be on target, which is the highest level in mathematics overall for our district. As far as our student group, which is a select group of students who fall into certain population groups, I anticipate that we will be on track in math, ELA, and social studies, and approaching in science. So we have some work to do there. And I think that we'll get around miss about 7 points, I think, on the status part, if things come out with the averages that I've used. The growth points, that's another 48 points, and we don't even know what that formula is yet. So definitely some room for improvement, but there's areas where we know exactly what we need to do in order to improve, and so we'll make that happen for next year. Any questions about the data?
No, I think, I'm excited about moving to this and the level of data that we'll have to submit and then get back on. So those areas where we have some work to do as we look at some of our quarterly updates. I think it'll be good to kind of include what our plans are and what we're moving towards on those areas where we have deficiencies.
Absolutely, be happy to do that. Also under MSIP and with this Success Ready Student Network, which is a competency-based move that's part of the MSIP program, we have been accepted into the Innovation Learning Design. That's what ILDZ means, and I'm so sorry. I looked at that, I'm like, oh my gosh. I had to look up what that meant. So Innovation Learning Design Zone. Todd and Tracy actually participated in the first meeting with me. So I'll give you a little information and I'll let them chime in if there's anything that they would like to share. But basically we reviewed the different elements of competency-based learning. And we're very excited that there are many of those things that we already have in place. It was great collaboration amongst different school districts. There were about 72 of us in the group. And we had some time to do breakouts and actually sit and pick each other's brains about things. So it was really nice. The second part of the meeting was actually kind of where they see the next assessment system going. So in the 23-24 school year, there will probably be a new assessment system. And what they would like to have is something that really focuses on student growth. And as we were sitting there listening to them talk about it, Todd and I kept saying, that's NWA. I mean, we already have an assessment that does all of those things. So we had an opportunity to explore 3 different states that have moved to this kind of model: Nebraska, Georgia, and North Carolina. We picked Nebraska, and guess what Nebraska uses for their state assessment? They use NWA. They've just had them adapted a little bit so it meets all the criteria at the federal level, which includes some criterion referenced questions. So whereas the way we use NWA right now is completely adaptive, and every question is based upon how the student responds to the question before. Nebraska has had them insert into each testing period, each benchmark, some questions that are static, that every kid gets exactly the same question. And then they're able to use that as summative data toward a achievement level like we see on our math test. So we were very encouraged by that and have our fingers crossed, because that's something that we're very familiar with. And we actually, it's data that we use, which would be nice. When you invest that much time into an assessment, such as we do the math test, I mean, we take weeks out of learning to do that. It would really be nice if it could be something that is timely, that we can actually act upon and do something to improve for kids. So, Todd and Tracy, do you guys have anything to add to that?
The big differences between NWEA and math testing is that NWEA would be tested 3 times a year versus we test only once for math. So there would be a fall assessment, a winter assessment, spring assessment, and then you would be measured on the growth throughout the cycle, which is incredible, because if you go to an NWEA system, it aligns perfectly with Missouri standards. And so you can actually go in and you can see your students, what standards they might struggle with in the fall. And then you can target that so that you have the opportunity to grow your students before the winter assessment, which is awesome. And so when they started talking about that, I was like excited, like finally, that would be amazing if we had that ability. And that data is instantaneous, which is great too. So you don't have to wait months to get your results back and see how your kids did, and then start looking at plans. So that's one of the things. The other thing I took away with that I felt was incredible was it's one of the indicators that Dr. Catterfield said that we already do, that I think it's going to be coming, is RTI. And so I feel really excited about that, because we're ahead of the game. We have a system of RTI and how that meets the individual student's needs. And so that was another positive that I took from the meeting, that where we are ahead of the rest of maybe what other school districts are doing at this time. So yeah, but it was a really interesting meeting, and I enjoyed listening and partaking. So
and I think for the high school, it's whenever you hear the testing is going to change again, you're just like, can't take any more changes. And then how is this going to impact us? But because we already use the NWA, but we can't use it like we want to, because we still have these other assessments. This is more like a personalized learning plan for every student. So it's not an overall, let's look at the data and figure out which questions. This is, where is this student and where can we target their learning? So we kind of talked about, it's almost like an IEP for every kid, because you're diagnosed each student, and then you can group them more easily. And we at first were like, oh my gosh, does this take care of, like, there's no more grade levels and they're just going to be in levels? At first it was overwhelming, but towards the end it just is more about shifting what we've always wanted to do. And then you're actually going to have the data to put RTI to work the way that it should, instead of for a particular class, it's for a particular skill. So it wasn't as scary at the end. So I'm looking forward to it too.
Our intent this year is really the reason that we chose this particular group to be a part of is just to learn and to see what it is that we already have in place that matches the expectations for success ready students. We're not moving toward anything at this point. We're just learning and seeing what this might mean for us. And honestly, there's so many different ways that this can be accomplished. I think that many districts will have there will be a variety of solutions to this. So, but it's interesting, and we'll meet monthly. And so the principals are invited to join in on that. It was great to have them there. I'm glad you guys
environment, and then what's the goal and objective is to implement and move that direction.
that is what the state would like to see. The way that this isn't forward in MSEP. It's just part of the overall recommendation. There are other parts of what is recommended in MSEP that aren't scored either. So, for example, we've talked about counselor ratios. Those things are there in the recommendations, but they're not necessarily part of how we're going to be scored. So I think that there's latitude for districts to really move at the pace that makes sense.
Would it augment any of our other testing requirements? Would we be able to substitute those type of assessments?
Do a whole lot of testing that isn't necessary. So we've got our local assessments, we've got our common formative assessments, we have our state assessments, we have our benchmark, which is important to us. And then we have assessments for kids who are, moving on into their secondary. We don't do a lot of superfluous testing. We've actually decided this year, so there will be an adjustment to the assessment plan next year, that we are not going to get the COGAT anymore. It's not data that we use enough when we can use NWA data in a simpler way to identify gifted kids, for example. So there's not a lot of fluff in the testing that we currently do. So I don't know that it really would.
Okay.
It would be awesome, though, to not have that huge testing event at the end of the year that we currently have.
Well, that to me, that's kind of the carrot if the state would ever consider that direction, because I like the idea of being able to use proactive data with that teacher who still has time with that kiddo. And instead of reactive data where that kid is already in another grade level and we've missed an opportunity to develop a base foundation. And I don't know who our lobbyist is, but I would love to get that in front of them, because to me, it reminds me a little bit of the healthcare world where we have standards of people who participate with Joint Commission and go through that standards process. You don't have to, right? There's incentives to do that because the merit behind how we can leverage data and improve quality is there. I think this tool is a great example of how we could better serve students. So,
well, this has been a push for many years, and there's been a group that has been working on this for probably the last 5 years. How can we improve the assessment system so it really is meaningful to everybody involved? Because right now it's not. So what can we do to meet the criteria that the federal government puts in front of us, but still do something that's helpful to us? And this was something that they suggested from the get-go. Would be NWA, iReady, which is another, we use that tool for mathematics instruction. That is another, that was considered. And it's really exciting to see that it might actually come to fruition. That it's not just a dream. And, this would make so much sense, but let's not do it. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see. Another thing related to NSIP, we did have our first staff POAC training on October the 3rd. And since then, the staff at the high school has begun their training. And I think the middle school starts in November. Is that right? So we did the first 2 sessions, similar to what the kids would experience, a little bit different. But it really was, an opportunity for us to reflect on ourselves and how we have been labeled and the impact of those things, but also just how even though we tend to have labels for people, when you dig a little bit deeper, you find that there's so much more. So just that awareness that it's human nature to do that, but that sometimes that is counterproductive. And if you take the time to really learn the 90%, which is the phrase that POAC uses, that you find that you have so much more in common than you have differences. And so it was a really nice session. They did a really good job. We have student groups going right now at the high school. Middle school has started as well. The high school kids have been coming down and helping with the middle school, correct? And then elementary, 5th and 6th grade will start, and the middle school students are going to help with the elementary. So there'll be some great peer mentoring going on as well. So I'm very excited about that. Related to that, and the RWL update that is also on my list, I wanted to share that the cadet teachers are going to help us with a major problem that we have. We have been working with the writing consultant, Matt Glover, for the last couple of years. And this year we have him scheduled to come in, and we pull all of the teachers from a grade level, actually 2 grade levels, to come and observe him work with kids. They do some planning together. He'll do a session where he's working with kids while the teachers observe, and they go back and debrief. That requires an awful lot of stuff. And the first day that we did that, it was really difficult for us to get everything manned the way that we needed to. So at our last admin meeting, I suggested to the principals that maybe we pull our cadet teachers in. We have 16 cadet teachers. Maybe they could plan something for that day so that they would be leading the learning, and then we would need fewer adults, subs, me, other administrators to come in and help fill in those gaps. So they are actually going to plan for December 5th a holiday around the world lesson. So they'll find 3 different holidays from other parts of the world and do a lesson for the kids. There will be the core lesson will be the same, but the activities that the kids do will be differentiated based upon their grade level. And the cadet teachers are going to plan it, and they're going to facilitate it, and we'll just be there as support for them. But that also hits our kindness and inclusion plan to present some diversity and expose kids to other cultures. So that's very exciting. I also wanted to share with you that we've had a career day at the high school. Maple Elementary is taking career day on the road this Friday. They are actually taking kids out to visit different sites. It's pretty complicated and amazing planning, but the kids will be out and about learning about different things. Our 6th graders are actually going to go to North Glen Career Center, where Denise and I were today, and saw the governor. So they'll get to kind of get exposed to that and what those possibilities are. And then the middle school starting their planning, and the other elementaries will have a career day in the spring. So very exciting there. Lastly, with strategic planning, I've included the intentions that y'all kind of drafted at the strategic planning meeting. Your words were included at the top of the attachment, and then David Burrell took your words and kind of grouped them, reorganized them, and came up with those intentions that are listed there. Today, I'm just asking for your blessing on those intentions, and then the survey questions will be written to match those intentions. So it will literally have the intention, here's the question that goes along with it. So we're getting really close to being able to launch that survey. We do have the Google form out for people to volunteer to be a part of the strategic planning committees. That has gone out in social media. I've also asked principals to put that in their newsletters to staff and parents. So that will be out. And we're looking for representatives of all the different groups that are listed in that Google form, and we will ensure that everybody is represented. So for example, if we don't have anyone who signs up, for example, that has their kids have graduated and they no longer have students in the school system, we'll go find somebody to fill that spot so that we get that voice as well. So yeah, that's all I have, unless you have questions.
You said you wanted the blessing on the draft intentions, but you want to vote tonight?
No, I just want a thumbs up, I think. Is it okay for us to go ahead with those intentions? I think he really captured it.
Yeah, it would be.
All right, appreciate it.
Yeah, I'd like to add, everything Dr. Credible shared, those are pretty large initiatives that she's even, we have tons of things going on in the district, and hers are very large initiatives as well. There's been tons of collaboration involving lots of people. So it's exciting for our district, seeing how we're moving forward in all these areas. We were pleased with the intentions and how they were grouped together. You know, they had 3 sections there that made them very easy to understand. And we've seen a draft of the survey as we know that these intentions are going to move forward, that survey will be drafted and ready to be sent out very soon. So getting close, like she said.
Thank you. I know that's a significant amount of work. Very much appreciated. All right, 9.4, Executive Director for Support Services.
In ESB is a timeline for the different projects that the board has given the blessing to move forward with for our April 2023 bond. So a lot of planning behind the scenes before that vote even happens in April. And one of those things that I discussed in the document is a timeline of what projects happen in the summer of 23, to which extent, and what happens in the summer of 24. So for example, with our bus maintenance facility that we plan on building, that has to have civil work done, has to have foundations drawing done. What is done before the April 23 date and what is done after and during which times. A lot of the work that you see in the 2023 bond is done on facilities that are already in place, meaning HVAC at middle school, HVAC at Horizon. Well, we can't be working on those projects while school's in session. With the bus facility on a separate piece of land, that can be working all year long and not disrupt the educational environment. So this kind of gives you a rough draft. This is draft only of what projects we have on the 2020 bond list and what pieces will be done in which time. So for example, I'll start with the bus maintenance facility. That is, a year-long process. You're going to see the timeline of that be similar to the Warrior Activity Center. That's probably going to take a full year to build and complete. Right after April 23, if we get the blessing from the community, then we break ground and start work. The sidewalks, that is something that can be shovel ready in April 23. So that work would happen in the summer of 23. For the HVAC project, that would need to happen in twofold. After talking with Representative with DLR and Jay Dunn, there's no way that we could get all the RTUs replaced and all the VAV work, which is going to be a ton of electrical work before school would start. So we're going to split it up in 2 phases. The first phase would be to just replace all the RTUs in all those areas, which would mean that would be in place for the start of school in the fall 23. And in the summer 24, the VAV work would be done. Just to remind you, the VAV work, basically what that does is that allows individual spaces to be controlled instead of a unit controlling all classrooms. So when the RTUs are replaced, we would see some improvement. They have humidity controls. A lot of the units were undersized when they were built originally. So you would have an increase in tonnage on some of those units. So you would see some improvements. You wouldn't have the individual control in the rooms yet until the VAV was added in the summer of 24. And so that would also give us a year to evaluate just replacing the rooftop units, how it affected those areas and what work we need to do with VAV in the summer of 24. So that's our plan for Horizon and middle school. The security enhancements, that has not been completely outlined yet of exactly what those security enhancements are. I'd imagine most would be done in summer 23, but without that scope defined yet, I don't have anything there for that. You can see the middle school turf conversion when that would happen. That wouldn't start until after the fall season. Construction would begin in November 23 and then would complete in April 24. And then the high school gym would kind of be a 2-phase. You would see the demo of the walls and those open up. We would not have the bleachers in time because bleachers are taking about 26 to 28 weeks lead time to order. So if we ordered them even the day after the bond passed, we would not have them in time. So the bleachers would be a summer of 24 completion. This is not set in stone. This is not set in concrete. This is kind of a draft just to let you guys put some eyes on it and just give your opinions for why we chose summer 23 or summer 24 for different projects and when we completed. A lot of this was talked through with the engineers from civil, with DLR architects and with Jay Dunn, and with that collaboration, that's where we came up with the different timelines. So just want to get your feedback on this and if you had any questions on the project timelines for the different areas.
So with the design and bid going before we actually go to our voters,
we wouldn't actually we wouldn't bid anything before we go to our voters. The only thing we would do before we go to our voters is actually have civil work done because the dirt work is never going to change. When you go out to, let's say, for example, if we look at the sidewalks and we go out and we have our civil engineers look and use their site maps and kind of map that out. That's not going to change whether we do that in the summer of 23 or the summer of 26. And so work that would be completed that would be benefit to us would only be done before the voters. No building design would be done afterwards. So that's why you kind of see a lot of the design, civil, and foundations before, but any type of bid work would be, let's see.
It's like number
So bid
two,
civil
three.
foundations they would bid, but nothing for design of a building, if that makes sense.
It's like number 2 where it says design and bid prior to April 2023.
Only for civil.
Okay.
Only for civil. So if it says that should be civil. They should add the
Okay.
term civil in there, just like on number 1 where it says to bid civil. So basically the dirt and the foundation and the sidelines aren't going to change whether we do this project in the April or summer 23 or the summer 26. Any design after the fact would be for a building design only.
And we did the same things on Eagle Heights.
We
and
did.
Warrior Activities. So
We did do the civil beforehand, so that way, once it was done, we could start, with the earthwork and be able to wrap that up before the next school season started to open the building on time.
Sure. That answers the question for me.
Yeah, it was confusing on too. Sorry about that.
Determined it was a risk, but it was a risk that we were worth, worth taking. So we were ready to proceed once the issue passed.
Yeah, the civil, I get. The other part I would
Correct.
probably had some questions on.
Correct.
Any additional questions on that?
All right.
All
The
right.
second part you can see I have listed in here is a HVAC proposal. And what this outlines is I've worked with Scott Bogart, our director of maintenance, and we have identified 3 units that we feel like are the most important units that we need to replace at the middle school in Horizon. And so we hope our community supports our April 23 bond, but we don't know 100% sure that's going to happen. So we have to still move forward with a plan to replace units if that doesn't happen. And so this information you have here kind of ties into the last timeline project I mentioned. If we move forward with purchasing these 3 RTUs, a lot of the design that they have and engineering into this also will follow in with all the other RTU units that they're going to build for Horizon and middle school. So by us moving forward with purchasing these 3, and I'm not asking for any action tonight, I'll ask for action next board meeting, but I just kind of wanted to let you see the concept. That would allow them to do the engineering to where we could do the RT replacement in the summer of 23. What that does for us is it protects us from inflation. If we had to wait till the summer of 24 to do all of our units, we could see, double-digit price increases. And this also allows us to split the VAV and the RTU work. Instead of having to do that in one summer, we can split that in 2 summers. So by moving forward with these 3 units, they're able to complete the engineering for all of our units that we would bid, after the April of 23 bond approval by our community. And then that would allow us to do those projects in the summer 23. If we didn't move forward with these 3, we would need to wait until that bond passed to then move forward with that. And right now we're looking at 24 to 26 weeks on engineering and production of units. We would not be able to do any type of RTU work in that summer. We'd have to wait till the summer 24 to do that. So by moving forward with this, hedging our bets on, we have to move forward with some sort of improvements, even if we don't pass this. This also allows the engineering on the back end to be able to do all of our units in the summer 23. So I wanted to kind of describe that concept goes in with the original timeline I showed you. And I will have this as a proposal in November for approval. This is through the Green Bush Consortium. It has our contract number at the bottom. And you have other districts. I mean, Park Hill is one example that uses the Green Bush Consortium for their HVAC project as well. And so it's very preferential pricing. These are also the exact same units that we did as part of the 2020 bond project. And so it's the exact same structure, how it communicates with our controls. And so that way we would have a uniform product for middle school and Horizon going forward. So I kind of wanted to prelude that in this meeting, just to have any discussion or any thoughts about the strategy there. That way we could work through that and before any type of proposals I would have in November for approval.
So to be clear, we want to move forward with these 3 units, whether the bond passes or not.
That's correct.
If the bond passes, will the pricing get rolled over, or is it just gonna kind of be separate other than the engineering?
Sure. The install would be bid out, so all the mechanical to install everything would be bid out, but the pricing would stay with that Greenbush contract that they have for that consortium. So in other words, it wouldn't drastically change where I think your question's going. They would have to stay with their consortium pricing that they have for that. So we'd be protected by that, in other words.
These 3 individual units, like replacements?
They were not. These units were train units that were original with the building. And so these 3 were selected. I went with Scott. I said, Scott, I said, you know, what are the 3 units that are on its last leg that we've had the most repairs in? We went through all the data from School Dude with all our work orders, saw how much money and parts we're putting into them. And these 3 were the ones that were selected that had the most work on them. In some areas. Yeah, we have, so like at Horizon, that was built in different phases. So we have different manufacturers basically all over the place, depending on when that phase was built. But I know these are trains.
But these RTUs, if I heard right, are the same ones you just put in before, so they have commonality with what we already have on campus.
Correct. The new ones that we're bidding here are they're Aeons. And so Aeon is what we use for the project this summer that was part of the 2020 bond.
Okay, the only reason I ask is I was just curious. I see the cost proposal, but I don't see design submittals or as built in terms of how it might work. And if we're not like for like, how do we know how we're going to reduct, pull wire, all
Sure.
of that stuff?
Well, that's gonna be part of the VAV. And so they're gonna bid that mechanical piece. This is just for the rooftop unit itself.
Okay, so just for the main air
Correct.
handler pushing to all of your other zones.
Correct. Yeah, that mechanical will still be bid.
So you're going to terminate land wire at the exact same place. You're just moving the unit out.
Correct. Yeah, this is our biggest lead time, 22 to 26 weeks. And so that's why I'm trying to bring this to a head now.
Okay.
Because, 26 weeks is half a year. And so to have a project in this summer, we had to think of a way to be creative. The creative way was, well, let's look at 3 units we need to do anyway. So that way they can start on the engineering. So if it does pass in April 23, they already have that done. And then, get them out and get them on our rooftops in that summer.
These 3 RTUs, the same tonnage or larger?
I will need to look at the specifics. I believe the middle schools are the same and Horizon is slightly different.
The next question I'd have is just make sure somebody ensures that our infrastructure, wiring, buckets, and transformers all are right size.
We will have to upgrade electrical in there. We don't have the amperage in some of those spaces, especially when the VAV starts. That installation, that's really going to increase the demand. And so that will be part of the bigger 24 package for sure. But yeah, as the tonnage goes up, we'll take more to power those.
So move forward with this now. Is this baked in to an operating budget anywhere?
Yeah, it's in our capital projects. It'd be part of like our, we've had built in for a roofing plan that we have for maintenance. And so it would come out of fund for that. The last part is probably the most exciting. You have a bond site plan that has a map of the areas. Randy, I don't know if I can share my screen here and show that. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. This just shows a quick map of all the projects we have and where they're at in our buildings. You can see that the transportation facility, where that's located, that just to let you know, that closed on Friday with Stewart Title and Our Savior. So that is that deed has been submitted to the county, and so that is have been recorded, and so that was successfully done. You can see the sidewalk improvements and where those sidewalks are going to at each location, and the improvement along Commercial, which is will be a great addition to the campus. You have the Horizon and middle school HVAC project that we just talked about. You also have our security enhancements, which we have not defined that true scope at this time. But we have some ideas that can include some things like cameras and other alerting systems. We have converting the middle school athletic field to synthetic turf is number 5. And then number 6, we have the high school gym expansion. So you can see on the main campus here, every building is touched, as well as the ability for kids to safely walk to those schools. So that kind of gives a nice little visual of what the 2023 bond package looks like.
I'm assuming the security enhancements piece touches Eagle as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
It's not on the site plan, but
Eagle, as far as like cameras, it has the best coverage of any building we have because it's newer. But there's other things besides cameras for security.
yeah, whatever
would be
mechanism,
part of-
forced alarms, alerting systems, yeah, whatever you put
Exactly.
in.
That would include every building we have.
Robert, the sidewalk, like you're going middle school to district office. Can you explain sidewalk
Sure,
there?
let's see here. So from middle school to district office doesn't have the best sidewalk. What they have them doing is basically going by the softball field and then to that walkway that already exists there. And so how a student would get to the high school is they would take that sidewalk by the softball field, go up where the visitors to our home events go by the away concession stand, and then cross that crosswalk to go to the high school. So that would be the path there. Nothing exists the other way because you have to cross that kind of major I'll call it 3-loop intersection where you have people exiting onto the main campus drive, which is probably one of the most hectic areas on our
Yes, it
campus. So we didn't try to even make anything there to try to get them across that. We're just taking them more south away from that and then getting up to the high school through that sidewalk.
So just so you guys know, the route that our students take through the district office, they do not cross the parking. They go, we have created a sidewalk. If you look on the northeast side of the parking lot there, and they just walk that, and then it connects, the parking lot actually connects directly to district office, and there's already a sidewalk there. So the students themselves, when they walk to district office, do not cross traffic. They do not go through the parking lot.
They go on the perimeter of the parking lot.
They go through the perimeter of the parking lot. Yes, if you draw that arrow, they on that northeast edge of the parking lot there. They walk there. There's no parking there. We've already crossed that off, so they have a lane they can walk safely to the district office. So it already exists. Now, if they increase that parking lot at some point, when that becomes, we would have to rethink that. But it's not in any plans right now. So.
I worry about the kids that walk, I see them every morning from central office down to Horizon. That is really scary with that many cars and the buses.
They could take the same route that our kids take and they would not cross traffic.
Yeah, it's a problem, I feel like.
Yeah, and this is a draft. Again, if there's a better route that we need to take with the sidewalks, we can certainly do it. We looked at that, I'll call it that triangular
Yeah.
entryway where the parent, drop off comes in. And we were just like, man, do we even try to navigate that and put a, pedestrian cross and even try to navigate that? We decided to either have them go the old route, which, Todd talked about, or have them take the new route by the softball field up that walkway where the visitors go to the concession, and then they have a crosswalk there to the high school.
Well, you can build all the sidewalks you want. It doesn't mean kids are going to walk them.
I do think I think this should be something we focus on, because
Sure.
watching those kids, I thought someone's gonna get hit one of these days. And when they have buses that
Mhm.
seem to go a little faster right there and you can't see these kids, I do worry about
Mhm.
their safety.
Yeah, I mean, we can formalize the sidewalk where we have, Todd, not having people not park, on that northeast side and have something they don't already. To have that is a pathway, and actually make that more official. We can route it that way. Just add that as well, just have more linear footage for the sidewalk. But yeah, that is a tough spot right there.
So they should be able to help us, but I know it's extremely popular, but on downtown, there's the raised crosswalk
Right,
to slow folks down and a reminder that there's people coming through that area.
right.
That engineering might be an option for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we, we just asked, and I know it's a public meeting, so I'm basically asking everybody from our staff to our community, please drive slowly through our campus. You know, please drive 15 miles an hour through our campus. You know, that I see cars speeding through our campus, and you know, I don't know if it's a student, I don't know necessarily who it is driving it, but every time I see it, I just cringe. You know, I ask that everyone take their time, think about, you know, is that 30 seconds you're going to save worth it? It's not. Take your time, go through campus slowly. So.
Is there anything, you know, after high school, middle school drop off that when you're leaving the campus going left and you're waiting for cars, is there anything logistically to make that safer? And
Sure. They talked about a roundabout in the future. Will that make it safer? Possibly. I know in the past our SROs directed traffic up there because that becomes then a public street.
yeah,
You know, you don't have any jurisdiction about, you know, somebody directing traffic. But those are our troublesome spots right up at Commercial where people are all coming in, and then the middle school, high school, or by district office where parent pickup are coming, you know, those are pain points. There's no doubt about it.
I've actually asked the city about that roundabout. It'll be a while. But that is.
It's a great topic for November 1st.
Something we can always do is bring a professional and have them do a traffic study on our main campus. You know, that's something we've talked about. We've had it done before. You know, I know Wayne has analyzed this over and over and over again in the past in his position. And a lot of times when I come up with a what if, you know, he shows me the data of the old traffic study or why or about this. It's like, okay, well, you know, I understand. We just need, you know, wider roads, and a lot of the areas we have we're landlocked. And we, you know, the amount of traffic we have is finite as well. So when we split our elementary and secondary routes, that made a huge difference. When we built Eagle Heights, it helped as well. But it continues to be a problem with traffic. Speaking of traffic, the last thing I wanted to talk through a little bit is on the consent agenda, we approved the bus routes. And so wanted to talk through action at our last meeting, you know, increasing the contract we had with DS Bus, excuse me, has resulted in 3 more people applying. Now, those people did not have a CDL, so they're going to have to go through training, and it does take a little bit for them to go through training, but we did have 3 more applicants. That makes us more, you know, market competitive with everybody we have. So thank you for your action on that last month. And those routes we have are our standard routes, but at times we don't have the drivers to drive those routes. And so our director of transportation kind of has those queued up, I'll call them double drop routes, ready to go when we don't have a driver. So in other words, what they'll do is we'll pick a neighborhood like Hills of Shannon, where they'll quickly go through at the speed limit, drop off those kids, and then come back to school and pick up the rest of the group, which would typically be 2 separate routes. And so at times we know that, you know, we know 48 hours ahead of time that that's going to happen. We might know it's for the rest of the week. We might not know until an hour before that route where someone calls in sick that we're going to need to do that. And so in the past, we would only communicate with parents about transportation if school was canceled, to let them know that, you know, they didn't need to go to school that day. If a bus broke down and they needed, they were going to be late, or if, you know, if there was a fender bender and they were stopped for the police to come and, you know, document things, and they'd be, you know, 40 minutes late home. And so in our current present situation with our shortage of drivers, we have had to communicate almost every day. And so with any type of situation where you have an increase in frequency, you know, it exposes your weakness. And we obviously need a better way to communicate with our parents, and a more standard way so they understand what that looks like. Is it always a text? It is always email. Is it going to come through a building? Is it going to come from central office? What that looks like. And so we need to communicate with our patrons and let them know, okay, we're going to communicate when we have a change in bus times this way. This is the method of communication of how we're going to do it. This is who it's going to come from, and have some specifics like that. And so one thing we are changing is our method of how we send that out. We used to have School Messenger. We're working through Apogee, which is our new system we migrated over to, which will allow us to do it by bus. So if there's a bus that's going to be late, it'll go just to those people that are on that bus, and we'll be able to send that going forward. And so that's in the works. Just want to let you know, lot of texts this week, I know, a lot of bus, issues with not having a driver for a certain route and having to make those last minute changes. And also just communication between DS Bus and myself. Hey, we're gonna have a bus late. Well, is that an AM bus, a PM bus? Which route? Does that bus have magnets on it to make sure they know, even though 16 is driving, 18 is there? And so that's something the new facility will help out with, because right now when we have a bus breakdown, that bus gets hauled off to Overland Park. And so we have to put a magnet, if they have one available, of that number on the bus, so they know which route that is, where in the past, we had mechanics on site that could fix that bus and get it back on the road. So it's causing more difference in numbers than we've ever had in the past. And that new facility will really help us get something fixed right away, instead of having to ship that thing over to Overland Park and having to drive a new bus for a route with a different number until that got fixed. So a lot of different things we're working through, but I feel like the things that have been put in motion long-term are really going to help us. We just need to get those people trained and get them behind a wheel and keep getting people recruited to drive a bus. So
Are you seeing less students ride the bus with those 15 to 30-minute delays?
parents are, especially in the afternoons, like on a Thursday or Friday, they'll see the alert and then they'll just go in the parent pickup line. And so I know it's causing more traffic at the buildings, and it's just having a ripple effect everywhere. Absolutely.
And just to clarify, Apogee is what our new website is, and it's also going to be our new communication platform. So just for everyone to understand what that is.
On the parent side, they necessarily won't see any difference, besides more specific communication, which would be good for the situation. They'll still get the text, they'll still get, email or call, however you want to send it out. But it'll help us be more organized and be more efficient. That's for sure.
Two questions. Do we know how do we know how many folks opted out of texting this past week?
If it's an emergency, they can't opt out. So the way we're currently sending it through School Messenger, if it's an emergency, they cannot opt out of that message. If it's a general message or something else, they can go in and opt out of those messages.
So I'd like to speak to that, because we talked about that. If you send too many messages via text message, it loses its luster. And so to all of our families, we apologize for that. So that's something we're improving on, is truly saving text messages for emergencies, and even working with our buildings on, newsletters. I think get sent out, like read your email. I think if it's once a week, that's okay. But if it's an everyday communication, we will try to avoid doing that, unless it's a school cancellation or something to that. So that's some feedback that Mr. Hedgeworth and I have talked through already about how to improve. And again, new situation requires new brainstorming, and so he's already had some plans in place to improve that process.
Absolutely.
And then knowing the difficulty that we've had, and that bus routes aren't as normal as they have been, I know other public transportation entities have the ability for someone to even look up and see where their bus is at and
Correct.
how close it is.
Correct.
Is that a technology that exists for schools?
It does.
Something that might be considered.
Yeah, so we have transporting on all of our buses right now. Be 100% honest with you, it doesn't work. We have had parents be pilots. We have basically the equipment on site, and Randy has been in this as deep as I have. There is a auto attendant, they call, on the bus that has to be powered on and working. And half the times those will fail. I mean, we have
9 right now.
on Sean's desk, they're piled up of fails
We have 9 that
that
are-
we're sending back in, and they're sending back. And so if that can't be reliable, we wanted to use that. They have an app called Bus Compass where you can send out alerts if a bus is late. We tested, it doesn't work. And so it's very frustrating that that's going on. That contract ends with the contract with DS Bus as well. So that system will be fully evaluated. It does some great things as far as GPS and our admin assistants be able to see where buses are at. But as far as being able to alert our parents and do that, it's been unfortunately a failure.
So now I have a follow-up. So if it's not working, what are we doing to cancel that contract, quit paying for a service that's clearly not working for us?
Sure. Well, we need to put them on notice, and we need to get it fixed. But we can go down that route. We think this will be a better way to communicate with it. And a lot of those, even if we use someone else like Samsara, for privacy reasons, they're not going to let a parent track the bus all the way. Basically, what it does is it will let you, give you a chance to get an alert if they're within 5 minutes. For privacy reasons, they don't want And that's across the board as an industry. They don't want everybody to be able to just track at all times. Let's say, for example, this way happened. This is why they don't do this. Somebody was bullying someone's kid, or their parent got on, found out where that bus was at, met that kid there. And so they decided for privacy reasons to only give alert 5 minutes within the stop. And so, so it will give you at least some notice, but unfortunately it's been really disappointing, to say the least,
Okay,
as far as
well,
that aspect of the technology.
maybe giving them notice and then a cure period might get them to
Yeah.
step up their
Their
game a
biggest
little
part is
bit.
they've had hardware failures, and with the hardware failures, they've been telling us with the chip shortage, well, that's 2 months out, and then we're just sitting there with our hands up. So it has been very disappointing. And so that, with the new contract, we will definitely be looking at a different system as part of that. That's all I had on my report. I do have the budget review, so anything financial, I'll go ahead and include in that second budget revision instead of in my comments for the executive director. Unless there's any other questions.
Any more questions on item 9.4? All right, we'll move on to 10.1. You're up again.
All right, let's see here, 10.1. All right, general financial review. I don't have anything to report, typical balances that you see this time of year in that report. I'd be happy to answer any questions here, and I have more to come in the budget revision. I don't know if Ms. Harwood had anything on that. Okay.
No questions on this? All right, on to 10.2, school safety.
I have a very short report on school safety. We're still creating a list of safety improvements. I have been given a list by a few of our crisis response team members. I had asked for a list from anyone that wanted to provide. So things that I have, electronic key card access and at all doors. We have them on most main entryways now, but that was a recommendation. Providing those access cards for our police departments or our emergency response, like more of police departments than emergency responders, having Knox boxes on our buildings if needed, using Google Maps as an overlay, numbering our doors, which we already have, because there's ever maintenance or painting, making sure those get finished. Looking at standardizing the locking mechanism. So we have some buildings that are older than others, and some locks have been standardized where others maybe are not. So a master key won't work in those settings. And I think that's few, but making sure we have that master that works in all places. Researching ballistic glass or what locations might possibly need that. And then just going on to like routes for emergency vehicles to get to buildings. So if we would have an emergency, making sure that our emergency personnel can get here a different route than maybe our parents responding. So if parents all respond before emergency vehicles can, then they can't do their jobs. And so having those access routes identified, working through our evacuation routes, which is something we'll be doing next, is doing our planning and making sure we have those updating our reunification points. So there were very few. We talked about this, the mechanisms on the door, the alarms, updating cameras, and really Eagle Heights being so far out, we're worried about it, but their cameras are probably the best in the whole district because they're the most current and up to date. But looking at like the garage doors in that building for the learning space, like how can we lock them or secure them? But overall, our partners are very pleased with the safety status of the district. So I believe once we make this list based off of these recommendations and get price points for that, we'll be ready to go within the next month. So the next one to present the whole plan. So very pleased with that report. Also, I'll be attending the Midwest School Safety Summit before the MSBA conference. Hopefully we'll have some ideas. We didn't meet in November or in October for a purpose. It's just been so busy. We'll get that bond list together, but also let's see what information we have from the summit and what direction we want to go. So, any questions for me?
What about potential hiring more officers?
With our city, there's not a potential. We should hopefully be having a second SRO. They hope by January, end of December, January. officers that are training should be completed. So they have one that they've identified that is on our agenda for our city school meeting in the beginning of November. So we can talk through what that looks like if they still have people. It seems like, they'll have people go through and then somebody will move on. They've already had some people that they've hired that have already moved on, so that makes it challenging. I have brought the topic up to the county, looking at how could we fund that. Another possibility, be talking with our Children's Service Fund grant, which is for mental health typically, but I know where Kansas City's been dabbling in a little bit of school safety. I would have to modify our grant completely because they approved those in March for the prior year. But if we're not getting services provided, then I could have a potential to modify, which could potentially pay if we can find individuals that can serve the need. It's, it's the resource management piece of that. So we have some options moving forward potentially.
And I know the county is, I've spoken with them and they're ready to help us.
Oh,
If we would like to
Okay.
discuss that further with them.
So I think after our city conversation in November, it'll provide us. But again, it would have to be a grant modification because the district currently, with funding, we have funding to pay for one additional SRO. We are using part of those funds to pay for our safety and security monitor. So we would have to decide if that position is one we'd like to keep. So there would be some discussion around budget.
What grant is that?
It's called the Children's Service Fund grant through Clay County.
And it's been a mental health, it pays for all of our mental health supports, our therapy, counseling, behavioral needs. It's
Something I'll discuss during our program evaluation next month.
So what would our cost impact be if we put a school resource officer in place? Or have we even went down that road yet?
Well, we do have that. I'd have to look up the findings again. Right. We budgeted for two, but the city has not been able to provide two. They've only been able to provide one for the lack of officers.
And there was interest in the county to partner?
Well, I haven't got that information. I've been trying to see if it's something.
We had a connection there, so.
But we want to be,
But we have to
be
be
realistic.
Yes.
If we're ready to go that route, I think that's something we should.
Well, I was gonna say county, great, but I mean, there are firms within the metropolitan area that do the exact same thing from what we want as a service capability.
Right.
Have we explored any of those at all, or?
No, we haven't had the funding set aside for that.
Well, I would much rather not wait on the funding. We didn't have the funding to hire 4 or 5 additional teaching positions and support positions either. So I don't want that to be a limitation. I'd much rather know what is the cost impact and then let the board decide if it's a benefit to move forward or not. Yeah,
Definitely more.
Phil gave us basically their
I
cost.
just want us to explore and look.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, part of the goal was to go to the summit, right? And then have all the recommendations together and pull the numbers from the different options to review in November, right?
We can, the summit wasn't for the officers necessarily, but.
Yeah, but also what other folks are doing, right?
Right, just to see what guidelines, what people are doing. I mean, but if you would like to know what the cost is for each building, then we can provide that.
Mr. Sexton, we talk about a commission.
Denise, a lot of what you talked about was security perimeter,
Correct.
which is great. But a lot of the events that's happened in the news lately is people that already had access to get in beyond, get past that perimeter on a regular basis. So how did your group think we stacked up to a situation where somebody would enter the building, once they're inside, how do we stack up?
Well, I don't know that they assess that, I don't know that they have a way to assess that. We have procedures in place. Looking at our emergency operating plans would be next on our list, but right now we were looking at what safety enhancements we currently needed just because of the timing of the bond coming up. So we just haven't gotten that far in the process.
Can't get in a room. Gotta have my key.
And buildings are doing their drills. I get their drill reports, so they're conducting their required drills. But again, I think, those tabletop activities that will be starting will be
They'll provide us opportunities to improve. I'm sure they'll provide a lot of questions, but that's how we learn what our weaknesses really are and how we will respond potentially in a situation like that.
And you've been working with the county on the emergency operations piece of it, right?
Well, we've been in contact. We have not gotten any work done on that so far. It's just been timing, quite honestly, at this point. We can
Yeah,
do
no.
anything, we can't do everything, but we're trying to get as much done as quickly as possible.
It's always good to put the infrastructure in place to mitigate risk. So we're moving the right step. I'm motivated to, let's have a broader discussion with resource capabilities, people in that space. So I know, I can't remember, we broached it back in August, so we're sitting in October now.
Well, and some of those questions have been asked and the answers just haven't been provided. Like, yeah, that will keep working. I haven't pushed and pushed and pushed.
And by no means, our community partners. We get it's a struggle. I mean, it's a struggle across the board for every industry, but maybe we can look at other markets that lend similar type service capabilities and see if we can't tap some of those.
Any other questions?
There's nothing more on 10.2. We'll move on to 11.1. 11.1 is the approval of strategic planning minutes for our special session on September 8th, 2022. I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from our September 28th meeting or September 8th meeting.
Yeah, so those three can't vote, right?
Thank you.
They can if they somehow watch the meeting.
Oh.
And confirm that the minutes match what what occurred, but as we didn't record that one. So for you others, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes, 4 in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 abstained. It was a special meeting and they weren't able to attend the entire session. Next item on the agenda, 11.2, FY23 second budget revision.
When we had our gentleman representative from our superintendent search, you heard one of the things they talk about was better clarity of our financial documents and how those are more easily readable by our community. So that was the goal of our budget documents this year. You can see that our second budget revision follows that. This is a collaborative effort between Mindy, myself, and Wayne Kruger. So even though I'm talking about it, I don't want to feel like I'm the one that did all the work here. So yeah, let me share the screen real quick. So a couple highlights I wanted to point out is on page 3. You can see that our reserve ratio is looking to be pretty flat for next year, but the main thing is it's above that 21%, which is board policy DIAA, which is important. You can also see the per pupil expenditure wasn't updated on DESI's site, so I couldn't update it here. That is older data. But also you can see where we rank with our tax levy, and our tax levy remained flat at 4.8404. You can see how we compare to other districts. The Hancock Amendment hit a lot of other districts about 2 years ago, meaning they had to lower their levy rate. The Hancock Amendment means you cannot raise your rate to accumulate more than 5% the amount of CPI. And so a lot of the districts had to bring that down. We did too in the past. I have a separate slide that shows our history of our tax rate that I'll get to in a second, but we were at $5.10 and we are down to the 4.8404. If you go through the document, you can again see our revenue breakout and how we bring in dollars for the district. You can see most of that is local effort. You can see our state is 35%, and I'll mention that later on when we get to our enrollment. And then this had some of the expenditures that we had on our budget this year. You can see the salary increases that were made last year, as well as some other expenditures and where we spend those and what that looks like as a breakout for this year. If you look at, here's our tax levy history. So this gives you a little bit of a view of how it has decreased over the years from 18-19. And then we have our current actual 4.8404, which was the same as last year. Prop C and formula aid, that goes with our attendance. And you can see we're going to be slightly down a little bit this year. Is when I showed our enrollment, you'll see why that state payment will be a little bit less based on enrollment. This piece shows our enrollment history all the way up to this 2022-23 date, which is our actual count date, which was the last Wednesday of September. And you can see that we gained 8 total students for the district. And then you can see the future 4 years, we look down to flat for our future enrollment. And so that means if you go back up to our chart on revenue, you're going to continue to see our state revenue decline. And that should, be a guide for us on, hiring and what that looks like to add staff. When we add students, it's easier to add staff with that because you have the payments from the state. When you don't have that enrollment to support it, you have to pull a lot more dollars from local to support that. So those are just equations you want to think about as far as future employment opportunities. And then the rest of the document shows all of our expenditures and revenue by fund and object until you get to the very end, which kind of just gives a summary. And that just kind of shows where we're looking at right now, which is a negative $448,000, but that is with an asterisk because that does include the $848,000 we used to purchase the land from our savior. And so if the bond passes in April of 2023, we'll be able to pay ourselves back that $848,000, and then our budget would not be negative. But I have to include it in here now because that's our current reality, is a negative 448,000. So I want to make sure everybody understood that number and why it exists in that way.
Well, my question, the actual. That's our actuals where we are to date versus our budget.
Projections
Which
are,
page was that on?
it's through, it's along the several pages that show your spend by function.
Okay. Yeah, so 2021 and then 21-22 are actuals, and then that last column is just budgeted
Budgeted for,
for this fiscal year.
okay, for this fiscal year,
Correct.
and those actuals refer,
Right. And the actuals for last year based on last year's ASBR.
okay, I always think it's important when reviewing a financial document to see what our budget is projected versus our current to date actuals.
Sure.
And for me, it doesn't have to be broken out by function, but
Mhm.
I like to see kind of how we're trending based on our
Right.
budget projections.
Yeah, we can include that document in our general financial review.
Okay,
Sometimes it is hard. For example, I will guess, and maybe
right. You try to
Todd and
allocate
Tracy
how
can
much
help
we
me with this.
spend per
I'll bet
month.
maybe 3/4 of the supply budget's already spent. And so you see that and you're like, oh my gosh, we're only 3 months into our budget. We already got 80% of our supply budget spent.
Yeah.
Well, so there's some statistical things that happen, but I can certainly include, what percentage of budget spent for each of those and include it in the general
Yep.
financial review.
Yep.
For you to see. Yep.
But overall, I mean, this is pleasant to read. It's easy to thumb through.
Good. Good.
I like it. I mean, compared to where we've been.
Sure. Sure.
know,
And I
4
do have the
years
working
ago.
document still. There's a second attachment.
Yeah.
If you like seeing that. Okay.
Some of the things I'd like to see, let's try to highlight, because I think it's important, especially when we start talking in terms of levy. Our school district is 10,606 per student, where state average is $1,241. What percent increase in our levy would it take for us to get to just the state average? And then what would that do to our teacher's salary? We're already below average on teacher salary.
Mhm.
We're spending an above average portion of our budget on teacher salary.
Mhm.
So I think that whole picture would be good to paint it.
Sure.
We're already below per student, we're below on our teacher salary, and we're on a high side of average paying our total budget to these salaries. Because I think we're gonna have to go after some more, we're gonna have to go back to our public and say, hey, we need increase our levy so that we can pay our teachers, we can do the resource, we can have money that we put into salary to help our kids out where they need help.
Mhm.
And without painting that picture a couple of years in advance,
Mhm.
I think it's gonna be tough. I think you have the opportunity, or we have the opportunity to paint that picture, so our patrons understand where we're at financially.
Sure.
Yeah, great point, Scott.
Yeah. We have different graphs that show, like, if you have a $250,000 house and your levy goes up by 10 cents, this is additional dollars that you would owe. We have graphs like that. Are you looking to say that if we match the state per pupil expenditure, how much more expenditures that would be on the district? And if that all went to salary, or how are you wanting to delineate those additional dollars to show in a graph?
Well, for our population as a whole, I think we know, hey, we'd have, in order to meet state average, we'd have to have X% increase in our levy.
Right.
And that would give us the state average of people.
Right.
If we were to hit state average of people, this is the amount of money we could put into our teacher salary. It wouldn't surprise me if that still doesn't make us just borderline even for our teacher salary.
Right.
We might have to ask for more than state average in order to get our teachers at a salary we want.
Sure.
But I think there's a concept out there that people say, hey, I got a $36 million budget and they can't find money for their teachers. Well, we're already spending a higher percent of our budget on teacher salaries than our surrounding districts. And we still are at the bottom per pupil. And the only way we're going to get over that is to increase our levy, because we're not going to get a huge increase from the state. We're not going to get a huge increase from the federals. So the only thing we have to offset that is local.
Correct. Yeah,
And-
locals where we'll see our increases. We will see very flat state and federal probably going forward.
And I think our public needs to clearly see that picture. Because I think if we're going to ask for more resources for our resource officers, if we're going to want to increase our teachers' pay, which I think is vital in our economy, and we're going to increase the pay of our support staff again, which is vital. It's only going to come from one part of the budget.
Right. The two biggest increases we see in year to year, luckily insurance has been flat, so I'll take that equation, is the number of employees we have hired and the amount we pay them. So how many additional positions are we adding? And then how much are we increasing the amount that those positions are paid? So those are two things. So if you keep one constant, the other can go up more. And so both of them add up to the amount that we increase our overall budget. Like you said, our state and federal is going to be pretty flat. And so we will see some increases from local from our pilot payments. Knock on wood. Yes, we have not received $1 yet of that, but also assessed valuation looks to be very good again this upcoming year. And it will be a reassessment year. But that is going to stop. That cycle is towards the end, in my opinion, of assessed valuation jumps that we've seen recently. Some of the home builder sentiment that you've seen come out lately, I feel like that's going to start to plateau. So after that, it'll just be our pilot payments. And so we do need to be strategic about, those upcoming funds in the next couple of years, because it could be pretty flat after that, besides pilot payments.
I think one thing when we do that, we want to make sure that we continue to emphasize is the delineation between bricks and mortar funds, bond issues, and capital expenditures versus
Great point.
those other funds where salaries and all that come from, because they are
All GO bond proceeds have to go to brick and mortar projects. They cannot go to operations or salaries. So by statute.
I guess my point being that you just built this, you could have done this instead.
Yeah, that
Do
would,
different.
yeah, it would take a levy increase for operations.
Good report. One thing, maybe for the next one, or you can go ahead and start it on this one. You do the work here on page 16 in the general summary, giving us an update of the deficit. Could you just start with a rolling reconciliation from beginning of the calendar school year and our deficit that we projected there?
Sure.
And to get to this number, it's probably 4 or 5 entries, like you already know. It's 800,000 for this, it's 200,000 for this. Now you might have a bunch of other small entries, just group them under other,
Okay.
but it's just a nice, clean, easy rolling reconciliation. You have the narrative there, you know the
Sure.
numbers already. So it'd just be something that you could just keep rolling. And
So you want to see
think-
the main items that are causing that 448.
Correct. So, you know, a school bus
Sure.
driver increase, right? That's a
Right.
number on that reconciliation, right? So we, as school board members, have a rolling
Kind of a
list,
chronological list.
you know, throughout the calendar year that we
Right.
can, you know, how far are we behind? And we're having discussions about school resource officers and everything else. It just kind of keeps us engaged on what decisions have been made and where we're going to be at in the future. I think just having that rolling, just numerical.
I can also show budget
reconciliation.
lines with most percentage over budget amount as well. If
Okay.
you'd like to see something like that on the second, and third budget revisions. The only thing is, the second budget revision comes in October because we have enrollment, we have all the salary increases in, we have all the hiring done. So it's kind of a time where we can, you know, really revamp and look at it. And then our next one isn't until, I want to say May or June. So then you're getting a lot of it late until we almost do the SBR. So I almost think I should put that in the general financial review for you to see monthly.
And just a nice, clean,
Oh,
easy
yeah, that's a good
reconciliation.
idea, Robert.
I thought
Yeah,
there was
that's
a
a good
third
idea.
one in the spring and then the final one in June.
I think at the third budget revision is May and then the final approval for the next year's in June, I believe. So I just don't want to wait until May to give you those updated things. I'll put it in the general financial review.
Yeah, it just allows us to not panic when we see the negative 400,000,
exactly.
right? Because we
Yep.
know that that'll roll out.
Right.
Other thing is, data center stuff. If you can check with Clay County, Platte County, I think we understand that Golden Plains Technology Center will change their zoning
Correct.
next year.
Yep.
Right, so that'll have a dollar impact.
Right.
And we're looking to make sure that that doesn't happen on Rocky Branch. We brought that issue up. We don't want developers to delay the zoning change because that's tax dollars that we're not receiving. So we want to have them flip from ag to commercial as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And so the other thing would be check on what Rocky Branch, get rough estimates, the county might be able to give it to you.
Sure.
But in 2023, we should be able to see those zoning changes, which at least increases the base of those taxes.
So that flip will go from 12% agricultural to 32% commercial based on assessed valuation of the real property value. We did call Clay County. They did confirm that they switched that last February. Of course, that was intentional for that application. They waited until February to turn in the application. So that way that's after assessment season. And then it's the next year that it gets changed over. You know, that would be expected from any developer.
Yeah.
They're going to look to maximize, you
Yeah.
know,
They should have done it in 2021, but they
Right.
kept pushing it. So we're going to try to make sure with Rocky Branch that doesn't happen to us.
So Clay County did confirm that has been switched over to commercial. And then, in my opinion, once that commercial tax cost, you know, goes above what the pilot payment is, then the pilot payment will kick in.
Mhm.
So we'll get one of the other
Yeah.
this next fiscal year. So
Okay.
I had a question, maybe I didn't hear right or something, but you said that in our bond, we were gonna ask for the 800,000 to replace.
with if the bond is approved, part of that is the land for the transportation facility.
Where does that come in? Does it add more money to this legend here then?
It's part of the building, total cost of the building, the
Okay,
6.2 million for the building.
okay, that's why I didn't
That includes the
understand.
land and the building, yeah.
Okay, thank you, that's
Yeah.
why I didn't understand.
Yeah, and then once that's is hopefully approved in April, then we can basically pay ourselves back for that land.
Okay.
That we bought.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you. I know that you and the team, and I know you've mentioned several others, and I would probably forget someone. So you and all the team who pulled this together, thank you very much. This is very helpful to start
Yeah.
to tell our story and
Right.
add to, here's where we're at and here's where we'd like to get to and here's what we need in order to get to that.
No, I
So
like the suggestions, you know, we worked hard on it, and at some point we just had to say, okay, here's the stuff we're gonna put in there. Put it in there,
Yeah.
let everybody look at it, and the additional things you guys want to see, that's great feedback. We want to add more, make it more viable for the, you know, public to see that, you know, some things on their tax dollars and what every 10-cent increase in the levy means to them. If you own a $250,000 house, or, you know, teacher salaries in here that would, you know, paint that narrative, that's important. And so whatever we can do to help, you know, the general public understand our finances better is is a benefit.
Second one, Jeff said, thank you very much.
Yeah, no
Good
problem.
work.
My other comment was, living in another business that's largely cyclical,
Sure.
a lot of times we use where we were prior year
Perfect.
to kind of know, because a lot of that expenditure like supplies
Sure.
comes right away, right?
Sure.
So,
Yeah, if you like an October comparison of each year in the past, we can start putting that in there. Like, just from like overall funds and things like
Mhm.
that.
to kind of let you know where were you compared to prior year
Sure.
when I don't know if we've had a normal year for a bit, but
Right, yeah.
we're entering a new normal, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Any more on this topic? All right,
I'll stop
we'll
sharing.
move on to, I make sure I get the right number here.
So that was an action item. Yeah, there are some, in the detail document,
There are some detailed account codes that we added. For example, there's some grants that we had some revenue come in, so we had to add some account codes. So it is an action item. And those very minimal amount of account codes that were added, but there were some for certain grants and paying, salaries and FICA and Medicare and all those things that have to be added in for our payroll system. So those are in that detailed document, that second one.
Where were those?
In the second document, the detailed. So you have the first, which is the overview, and then the second, which is the working document.
Oh, that one.
And that is the 54-page document that has every single individual account code that we have.
And the highlighted portions are the ones that we're accepting the change on.
Those were some of them. A lot of them are just project codes that really are just how we organize it internally. Nothing that was of any major substance, and it didn't change our overall budget. Whatever was brought in from the grant is spent out in salaries, and it was just really just put in for processing internally. It didn't change our overall spend.
I'll go back to my prior comment. Thank you for the previous document.
Sure. Yeah, and this is what you used to see before with just a cover page. So,
Robert, could you
Yeah.
maybe, very quickly just
Explain the process of who you meet with, how you get,
Sure.
I know extracurriculars, for example, is a good example
Sure,
that there's kind
sure.
of some different narratives. So how does that
Sure.
process work or? how does
Yeah,
it
so with
come together?
extracurriculars, we have a uniform cycle that Darren works closely with all the coaches on. And so in different years, different activity groups come up for their cycle of uniform changes. So what he tries to do is group, let's say, for example, girls golf, basketball, and baseball. It'll be their year when they have a refresh for their uniforms. And then the next year, because there's so many kids that play football, they're usually alone by themselves for a year. And then you have maybe soccer and a couple other sports. And so you try to get the spin to be pretty static. And so, Darren has a working document that he uses to work with those groups, and he's always going to meet with them and find out what they need. We know that uniforms 5 years from now are much more expensive. And so, we have a lot of variables from revenue. For years, we didn't have any revenue during COVID years. We didn't collect dollars. And so those all go into what we call activity accounts. And so those accounts are in and out accounts. They don't reset after every year. And so he works very closely with those folks. Is there any individual group maybe?
No,
Okay.
you're doing great.
Sure. Okay. And so he plans with those, and it might be different, for example, I know like band uniforms. I mean, they've probably doubled since the last time we, bought those uniforms. They're about a 7 to 9 year life cycle. And those are things they're coming up on their end of life that we gotta, work to get for those folks. So our motto here has been, we'll always get what you need. We know those boosters and we appreciate those boosters do those extras, but we're always going to get you what you need. And so, I think Darren does a really good job with those groups. And Tracy, you have anything that, since there's so many in Todd, as far as those activities and how we plan and budget for them, since you work closely with those coaches at all? Yeah, you're right.
There's so many kids that, go out and play. We were just talking about that earlier. Asking questions about uniforms, and it's hard to keep up because we have more and more kids that want to participate. Which is a good problem to have. So.
Mhm.
So for the yearly reoccurring expenses, I'll give the example of Adam Roski with his football equipment replacement and reconditioning. I asked him to come up with a 5-year plan and then look at what you need within 5 years, so you never get that large 1-year recurring cost, but you spread it out and plan accordingly. Like, for example, a football helmet has like a shelf life, right? So you should be able to look at your football helmets and be able to say, okay, I need 80 football helmets for multiple footballs. So you should be able to plan what that looks like for the next 5 years in order to maintain your inventory and know that you still have up-to-date safe equipment. And so those are some of the things we do at the middle school, just to make sure that that's occurring. And so, you know, we don't want to get in a position where we have to buy 100 brand new football helmets in 1 year. That's silly. It's not wise. It's not good use of our money. So that's how we do it for those types of expenses. But as far as uniform rotation, same thing that Robert explained. We have a rotation. It's established, so we know. So they'll start probably around December looking for the uniform rotations for the next school year. So they'll get bids and they'll go through the process. And we try to keep our students in updated uniforms that are respectable and show our pride.
No one like the band. There's a lot of kids, but we still have to update those every so often. And so Tom will start prepping the year before. That's gonna come up next year. He's not meeting with Aaron. So everybody has their schedule and they know that schedule. But I would say every single group has that budget for their uniforms, but every parent still has to pay into costumes or uniforms, even football. They pay for camps, so even though they have a lot of equipment too, they pay, even though there's a lot of kids. So it doesn't matter if it's bigger, I think parents still have to pay, so. It's just.
And some of our sports are uniforms are not regulated by mission. So for example, cross country, and those students want their own jersey. They don't want to wear a jersey that's been worn 5 years in the past. And you don't have to have specific uniforms for middle school cross country. And so we've just established, you know, it's a money in, money out thing. We try to get a relatively inexpensive but quality product for them, and just buy their own jersey sort of back to the events. But again, we have a great community, and that's what we're all for.
No, thank you both for that.
Well, even going away, then I will say our kids look good. And they're always complaining, we need to update our uniforms, but we look pretty good wherever we go. So, they're clean and they, you know, sometimes you walk into some of the private schools, for instance, and they're all matching in there. But our kids, if they want something, the coaches sit down with parents and they decide, okay, maybe we're not, you know, I'll pitch in and buy shirts. So, I will say, just having supervised so many things, we do look really good.
So on this, we're just approving the budget as a whole, not any specific revision.
Correct. Correct. As far as a line item change, as far as that increased, the only thing really there is, and this was talked about the last board meeting, is the acreage on the land came in and surveyed at 5.3. And so we had an amount deemed per acre. And so that's in there at 848 besides 800. But everything else is basically whether there was a grant. And so you see that revenue in, and then you see it paid out. So it matches whatever came in and came out. So there's no increase asked to go further in debt for any type of line item, if that makes sense.
Any additional questions on 11.2? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the second budget revision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.3 cohort enrollment update for FY 23.
Yeah, so our cohort enrollment, wanted to show that enrollment update. You kind of saw what our overall looked for future predictor, and it comes from this cohort enrollment tool. So this kind of gives you a breakdown per building and how many students of that +8 we had for the year, how it broke out per building. So Horizon was our largest building that gained the most students at +19, and Maple lost 27. And so, on the front that you might have, some fear to that, why you're skewing, but later on, I'll show you our future cohort projections and how that kind of lines out. So you can see that we have a negative growth rate until 2025, 2026. Our state payments will be lower in FY 23 compared to 22 because we are pretty flat on enrollment, and those higher years are starting to drop off. The biggest thing when you analyze all the data, we have our kindergarten cohort groups are coming in around 170 to 175 kids. We graduate, 225 to 230 a year, depending on the year. And so that averages around 55 to 60 kids that we have to have move in just to fill the gap every single year. And so we're getting those kids to move in. They're coming. It's just we're only getting about 55 or 60. If we had as many kindergarten kids coming in as graduates, you'd be seeing us going up 60, 70 kids every year. But because we got to fill that hole first, you only see us go up about 8. And so that trend we do see continuing based on our survival rate calculations. If you go to the second document, you can see the highlighted column that shows our enrollment for each grade, kindergarten all the way through 12, and what that total is. And then below that, you can see what it was per building. And as you look to the future in 23, 24, 24, 25, and 25, 26, you can see that we show a negative growth rate for those years. Again, the reason the data shows that is we have 3 more years of large classes, but our freshman class is only 207. So once that senior, junior, and sophomore class gets through, then our kindergarten enrollment, if it does stay around 170, 175, we only have to replace 20 to 25 kids. And so you will start to see that trend go back up. But overall,
Pardon me, Randy, any way we can show when we're talking about a document so folks at home can follow along? Sorry, Mr. Hedgebar.
Ever see it? Okay. So you can start to see how that trend follows over 10 years and what those growth rates look like. The data has been pretty consistent over time. I know a lot of people look at that and say, well, look at all the growth in Smithville. Look how much building they're doing. The thing is, the people that are moving to Smithville, a lot of them just don't have kids. They're retirees. They love the bike trails. They love the lake. Their grandparents that want to be closer to their actual kids that go here. They just don't bring kids with them. And so, is that the affordability of some of the housing here? People have, talked about that as a possibility. I am not a expert in construction management as far as residential homes go. I'm not a demographer, so I don't want to pretend to say those things, but those are some of the things that I've heard our demographers say. That's some of the things I've heard that people in the industry say of why you don't see that growth. The birth rate is going down overall for Clay County. So you're seeing people who do have kids are bringing less kids. So all those things together are some of the theories of why we're seeing that flat growth in Smithville when you see so much, building going on. So, the survival rate is what it is. It's an logarithm that takes how many kids stay in a given year, like that class in kindergarten that's 169. How many of those 169 kids will be back next year? And that is based on data. And so there are some outside factors. COVID isn't built in this logarithm, and kids going to private school that may pull away from that number. There's some other major factors that aren't in this, but your year to year, how many kids come back, how many kids we see leave due to graduation and come in for kindergarten enrollment is. And so I don't want the document to make it more than it is. It's not a crystal ball, but it is over time giving us a pretty good idea of where we might be. So,
I think it's a good document, and I think this is stuff we share too.
sure.
This memo you put is good. It writes it down really well, and it's very nice to see this. But I like this a lot because that's data I need to see, but for the general public, this is a very good way of doing that, Rand.
Our numbers do change year to year. That count date is our, date we send the numbers to the state every month. Karen, upstate an enrollment document for you that you usually see. I didn't put it in this one because we have so much other information from the budget to this. And then next month, you'll get to see if we're having students move in during the year and that increases, or if that's decreasing. And you'll see that from her every month. And that graph will be in color now. So it'll look a lot better. So. Any questions on enrollment?
All right, thank you very much. You're allowed to get a water now.
All right, thank
I
you.
can answer. I think you asked one time like how many students were attending non-public, and so I was able to pull that information. So last school year, they have to verify, and they have to verify by the end of usually November, December. So I don't have this year's complete. But last year we had 67 students that were attending a non-public school that registered through DESI. So like Northland Christian isn't offered that, but other schools have, so I don't know. I would have to see what the parameters are of who has to do that, but we had 67 last year. This year, though, already we've only had 2 schools that have so far put their numbers in, and we had 82. So, and they're, like I said, those numbers will not be final for another month or so. So that's that competition piece that we were looking at. When they register through DESI, they have to tell me how many students live in what boundary, Horizon, Maple, Eagle, middle school, high school, and we have to actually verify that those are our students. So they don't have to get names, they have to get addresses, and we verify whether they're our student or not. So we know that those numbers are accurate. Some of those students have never attended our schools. They've gone to the parochial school, for example.
All right, next on the agenda, 11.4, career ladder plan.
So I've included a memo and the actual plan that was submitted to DESI. We received word on the 11th that our plan had been approved and that there was adequate funding to give us all the money we requested, which is close to $200,000. So it's pretty exciting that our teachers, we have $300,000 with our local funds to give to our teachers. And then the next day, the committee met. Sean happens to be on the committee, so I'll let him chime in if he would like. But at that time, our goal was to determine how do we honor the stage 3 and allow them to access some of those grant funds that we had available. And Sean actually suggested the $750 stipend, that if they complete the 75 hours, they just get it. And that would equal $50 an hour, which is what the hourly rate of pay would have been for stage 3 at the maximum amount. That was very well received by the committee. And it just so happened that the Monday before, Wayne and I were looking at the ESSER-3 grant. We already knew we had $36,000 in tutoring funds that are still available through that. But when we submitted the grant, we also put $28,000 for iReady, which has a program called MyPath, which allows us to pinpoint where kids' deficits are and help make up those gaps. So we had placed that as one of the items that we were going to purchase using the grant funding. And I had coded that $28,000 to textbooks. And so when we moved that out and put it in the grant as part of what we applied for, that left us exactly the amount that we needed to fund the $750 stipend. So the plan is before you. I do need approval of the plan for DESI, and then later in supplemental pay, we have added that $750 stipend to that schedule, so that that's set and ready to go for the end of the year when our teachers are. like, don't make. But I do want to give just a shout out to, well, Susan is on that committee, but Sean, Allison Molinaire is representing the middle school, Rhonda Henshaw Maple. Nicole Johnson is representing Horizon, and Audrey Baber is representing Eagle. So they've been very helpful in their feedback. We do have a process set up that they're kind of playing with right now to make sure that it will work for everything we need it to. And we hope to launch that Friday or Monday so that teachers can begin submitting their plans.
Is the stipend annually renewing, or is it, you have to apply for it every year? You get it every year?
Career ladder? No, we'll have to apply every year and let them know. Basically what we did this year, we told our teachers, what are your intentions? Then we submitted to DESE so they knew how much money we were expecting from them. Then when they got all the requests in, they just determined that we have enough in the amount that we've allocated to cover. So we'll have to do that every year. This $750 stipend right now is written in for this year only. What I would recommend, and I'm not part of this committee and not part of that recommending process, but if we want to be able to honor longevity, which is something that's very important to our staff, that's come through loud and clear in our teacher morale meetings, we would need to allocate some additional local funds to support our end of that 40%. At least $80,000, but I would recommend that we go 100 to make sure that we have enough, because our people will very quickly get to the level where they're able to apply for these funds. In the past, to hit stage 3, you had to have had 10 years in a Missouri school. Well, now it's 5. So we have a lot of people who are eligible for that stage 3. So that's just my 2 cents on what we should look for as we move forward so that we can fund it at the full level.
And Michelle, I wanted to point out, a lot of schools did not take this career ladder money because the state is only providing 60% and the district has to come up with the other 40. Luckily we did have that because prior boards had kept that. So, kudos to them, kudos to Michelle and you guys for making this work. And we hope that hasn't been proven, right? But we hope that they'll prove it the state again next year. Did they do it on a year-by-year basis?
On an annual basis. I would be shocked if they didn't fund it next year, but I don't think it's going to be forever. So hopefully by then we would have maybe some data center funds to help supplement, but thank you, Robert. It's, what Kim and I sat and listened to all of the teacher morale meetings. And the bottom line is we need to put more in their pockets. So this is one way to do that. And to be able to actually get it done this year, honestly, is really exciting. I wish that it had worked out the way that we wanted it to with that full 5,000, but I'm really excited that 84 of our teachers potentially could get $3,750 extra this year. Another 13 will get an extra 3,000, and another 13 will get an extra 1,500. So for things that they typically do anyway. I mean, for a lot of our teachers, this isn't putting in a lot of extra time. And I think we just need to be really aware of the fact that if we had submitted a plan with a stage 3, in order to meet our budget, we would have had to decrease it by 35%. At stage 3, the requirement is 100 hours, and we can't budge on that. So if we have a stage 3, our teachers have to put in 100 hours. That would have been $32.50 an hour. So that just really didn't make a whole lot of sense when we could do stage 2 at $40 an hour and then do something to supplement with the grants. Now it's not the full what we expected, but at least we're giving them we're giving them a better return on their investment as far as time goes.
See, probably exponentially a greater gain is through the student
Oh my gosh.
And for a small price, the benefit that they'll gain from this, like I said, it'll be exponentially the additional time, whether it's one-on-one or small group. And I think we can't probably put a price on that. So
And I would completely agree with that. And we required that 50% of the time be direct student contact. So that's a club, that's tutoring, that's mentoring, doing something with kids. And some of the ideas that are coming through for after school clubs and activities are really exciting. And you're absolutely right, Denny. It is going to be amazing for kids. So that is definitely a great benefit.
It's already been said, but thank you to you and to the committee and to everyone else who helped figure this out. And then obviously our staff who goes and makes it happen, and so the kids benefit. So thank you.
So, Mr. President, I make a motion that we accept this plan as presented. Second.
I hear a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. They'll be bringing these little oath of putting it on the wall behind you. Next item on the agenda, 11.5, the personnel report.
In front of you, you have the personnel report for October.
This as presented.
I move that we approve this as presented.
Hold on, just.
Okay. Hold on.
We've got a delay
Oh, sorry.
on the previous vote.
Yes. He just loaded. No, it went through, it's just, no.
7-0, motion carries.
Thank you.
All right.
No.
So we have a motion on the personnel report. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second.
I motion, and yeah.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.6, updated supplemental salary schedule.
Yes, this is the updated salary schedule that Dr. Cradfield was talking about, where we've added the $750 stipend to this schedule. There's an attached brief description of how we came about those funds.
There's no questions. Entertain a motion to adopt the proposal. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 11.7, instructional assistant and substitute staffing.
Yeah, so I included this memo. It's just informational only. We've talked about a lot of important things this evening, from staffing to funding. This is an area that we're seeing a critical need. We know that over the last couple of years, we've struggled with substitutes, and then we also have struggled with maintaining our instructional assistants or fully staffing that position. So I started to do a little research, gather some data for you, put together this memo with some of the information that we have so far. These two positions seem to go hand in hand. Part of the issue that we're seeing is because we are short-staffed in the area of IAs, we're having to use substitutes to cover those. And then if we just have normal absences in any given day, sometimes what will happen, because our IAs are certificated to substitute in a classroom, they'll be pulled to cover for a teacher, and then we're short an additional couple of IAs. And again, this impacts our ability to service those kids with special education needs or IEPs or just with behavior issues. So it's sending us down a wormhole here. It's a spiraling effect. And so we're trying to look at both of those areas to see what can we do to get ahead of the game, because right now we're running behind. If you look at our substitute rate, we thought we were coming into the year really strong. COVID's on the downslide. We're not meeting or hitting that road there. Why are we still having issues with substitutes? Well, I included that chart for you. The last survey we did prior to approving the budget and the salary schedules in June for July 1 moving forward, we were towards the middle or top for our substitute pay. But over the last few months, other districts have seen the same hard hit with substitutes. And so they're making those mid-year changes. Quite a few districts made an increase in September. Our substitutes are aware of this. I mean, they're telling our principals, hey, I can go down the street and I can make $140 for a day and you're paying me $100 per day. So we know that we are competing for this, very small segment of employees who are willing to come in and on an irregular basis and help us with a variety of needs. It's a hard job. You never know day to day what you're going to be presented with or what classroom you're going to walk into. And so these are two areas that we really need to decide how we're going to invest our time and money with that. So you've got the memo in front of you. I'm not going to read it to you. Have an opportunity to review that, but I will answer any questions that you have at this time. And again, in November, I hope to have additional data for you and some possible strategies that we can use to overcome this, that either we'll continue to implement that we're already trying, or some new strategies that we can bring to the table. One of which you may guess might be an increase to rate of pay. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for pulling the data together.
Yeah,
It's very helpful.
I did say that with IAs, it was 2017. Last study done.
Yes, so back in 2017, there was a market study done looking at a variety of positions within the district, I guess every position in the district. And I wasn't in this position at that time, but I was aware of the study that was happening. And based off market value, they did adjust that rate of pay. And it was only 5 steps for our instructional assistants at the time. And so we have doubled the number of steps. So they have a greater potential earning. However, that starting is much lower.
Is much lower. I saw that. So you're going to come back with recommendations to hopefully improve that. Are there other class types that you're looking at besides substitute staffing and IAs that you're doing a study or comparison to that we might need to dive into?
Well, we always look at a variety of our positions as the year unfolds, as we prepare for next year's budget. We collaborate in January with our principals on what their needs and wants are, and we collaborate with our salary and benefits committees. We've got a certified committee and a classified or support staff committee. They bring to the table concerns and wants and needs, and so we all work together on kind of filtering through those and tiering those and things like that. So that's a collaborative effort. Last year, our nurses came to the table with some, proposals. Our athletic trainer came to the table. I'm trying to think of some of the other groups. We did quite a few of the things that were asked of us last year. We had that entire list where we added steps. We increased the pay for our parent educators, for our Warrior Preschool educators, but that's funded through the Warrior Preschool. We've increased our custodial rate of pay significantly to help increase our hiring capacity there. So yes, In the long run, we will probably bring some things to the table because we know that's a critical need just in education. For our immediate need, we can't continue to ask our principals and our staff to cover at the rate that they're doing.
Right.
I didn't include this in the report. I just pulled this over the last couple of days. But in September, our fill rate was 86%. And that's low. If you're below 90%, you know, your building is struggling because you're having to cover classes with other teachers or principals or administrators. And so it really does create a burden on our entire building. And that is really going to wear out our staff. And we're already seeing that impact on staff morale. So we're trying to increase staff morale this year. So we've got to do something now that's going to help our principals and our staff in those buildings.
And that's the reason I'm asking is I'm just go ahead and try to get out in front of any class type out there is I'm a proponent of, and I would imagine most of the board members are. So if there are other positions, let's start bringing it up and having discussions.
Okay.
Because we need to be proactive on these issues.
Okay,
So.
that sounds good.
So I heard you mention your kind of fill rates with the substitutes. In comparison, do you have median fill rate data across all
Their school districts. I'm curious to see, you know, people who are paying 140 for a substitute, what are their fill rates?
I can't go in and retrieve that, but I can do an outreach and ask for that information.
I'd just be curious to see across the board. Because, you know, our assumption is 140, they're crushing it, they're above 90, but we could be wrong, right? It
Right.
might be just an industry type issue.
Right.
And then is there another way to, you know?
Mhm.
I would be a proponent of looking at a couple different options, like just increasing overall educational staff on hand, not just a sub.
Mhm.
Someone who could float and do multiple functions
Yeah.
in multiple capacities. If it's helping with, you know, some type of program initiative or covering the classroom.
And we've talked about strategies like that, even like with our custodian. If we have a custodian now, we have to pull maintenance in to cover for that. We've tossed around the idea of hiring a full-time substitute custodian because in any given day, you may have someone out or they may be able to help out in any area where we have a need. We have what we call permanent subs in the buildings where they show up on 2 days a week or 3 days a week and they're there ready to step in wherever they're needed. But right now we only have one. We've just secured for 2 buildings a second permanent sub. We're working on that. But even to do that, it's been a challenge for us.
So when teachers do fill in during their plan time, they get compensated for that, correct?
That is correct.
Would it be beneficial to increase that pay versus, and can that be done versus trying to find substitutes in IAs?
We definitely can increase that rate of pay. It's $17.83 right now for an hour. I think that, again, when we look at other districts, everybody's kind of around that $15 to $25 mark right now, but increasing that, it would, again, would that impact staff morale so that they feel valued for their time? They're stepping in, they're helping out during a time that they could be planning. or
Yeah,
bringing
which is
papers.
valuable. I'm not
Yep.
trying to discredit, I'm just saying,
Right.
if we can increase that, maybe that
Mhm.
will make it.
Robert. We're talking about increasing of lots of people's salaries. It's all coming out of the operation budget. We can't sell more widgets.
Correct.
Where does the money come from?
So in the second budget revision, it had a negative 448, but that is with the 848 in there for the land purchase. You can't ever make any assumptions. We hope the community supports the bond project for us to be able to pay that back. Let's hope that happens. And if that does happen, we have a little bit to work with. Some of the things that Ms. Davis is explaining are just essential functions. If we don't have subs in our building,
If there's no money for it.
we'll
and the
crumble.
question's still valid. Where does it come from?
Well, we will have to, I mean, you're right, we can't sell more widgets, so we have to evaluate the budget. And we have to say, instead of maybe being at 22.4 reserves at the end of the year, we're at 22.1. you know, but the thing she's talking about, we have to find a way to get subs in there. Maybe there's other creative ways we can think that aren't as monetary. But I would think Ms. Davis would agree that the main motivator, a lot of the subs is that monetary value. And when they can walk down the road and make 20 to 25 more a day, and we're seeing them do that mid-year, you know,
Disagree with any of
sure.
that, but the bucket only so.
Yeah, you're right.
And when the bucket's gone,
And-
it's gone.
And I think
So-
myself, I think anybody here in our cabinet are up for any other suggestions that
Well-
maybe in your own industries you're seeing of recruitment tools besides monetary.
So it kind of gets at a culmination of what you said earlier and what you're getting at, right? If you can't take it out of O&E operations and equipment, which we can't, then you start looking at your next biggest bucket, which is salaries, right? And then what positions do we have that aren't critical that we might identify as critical to support and augment other increases, right? That's the reality of the conversation.
It's either that or ask for an increase in levy.
And a broader conversation about being very proactive and strategic about what our needs are going to be. So we can figure out if we have to go increase a levy, where does our pilot impact help, augment some of our needs? So we can forecast it. If we don't, so I guess to a broader point, like, I wouldn't be shocked if we're not getting to a point where we need to have kind of a financial planning strategic workshop where we really start putting some of that stuff out there. Because we do have, I mean, just to be honest, guys, we have support functions in our buildings that I know other districts do not have. Right? I know districts right now, just to the north of us, that don't have assistant principals in their buildings at an elementary level. So we are doing things that might not be a monetary value, but they provide additional support to students and educators. And it gets to a point, where's our limit? Where's the threshold? What can we balance? What can we forecast? And what can we plan? And where's the impact?
And because 75% of our budget is salaries,
Correct.
then I think we're talking about more of a staffing plan. Because our contracts are pretty static. Our, operations for heating, buildings, electric are pretty static. That's the biggest variable. So to have that financial impact is really more of a staffing plan, because that is the biggest impact on our finances.
And I'd like to get to the point where, if we're talking about a budget committee and meeting or something like that, is getting to an actual cash flow statement year over year for what it looks like for 3 years and 5 years, and account for certain scenarios that board members want to take a look at and take in consideration the reserve balance and so forth. But start really projecting out 3 to 5 years on a cash flow basis.
Well, Robert has that tool that we can put the numbers in and it'll roll it through the year so we can see what that looks like over time.
Kim, do we have an idea, or do you know the number of substitutes that we average per day that could be calculated per week, per month? So if we did take and say add $20 to it, what that spend would be, just, to take it from 100 to 100. Is it 20 substitutes per week, or is it more than that?
We went through that scenario of raising the substitute salary in the spring. So I have that number is $25,000. If we jump from $100 to 120, based on the number of days per year, it's around $25,000 to do that.
Yeah, so my fear is we kind of, in each meeting, we kind of hear another aspect, which you guys are right, as you identify the needs, you're bringing them forward. That's great. And I want to make sure it's clear. So my wife doesn't come in. I'm an advocate for as much resources as we can provide. But as we start to cherry pick things we need to move forward, what happens is if we don't have full sight of all of it, and we only move one initiative at a time, they will become competing priorities among themselves.
Right.
And then we have to start figuring out how we do that. So, I think to the broader point is, all right, we know we have some issues across the board. Substitutes is becoming one of those. Our other positions, let's step back and let's identify all of them
Well,
and their impact.
and I think you bring up a good point. We have those internal discussions of, we can have anything, we can't have everything, and how do you identify those and prioritize those needs? I think as these things come up, it is affecting student learning, but we also need to discuss as we plan out in January, typically is when we look at our staffing, if we know that we need to increase teacher salary and we know we need to have X staff member to support students, then what can we take away? And that's where that open, honest communication with our community is. You know, we're a premier learning environment, we're a great school, but if we can't fund it, where do we start making cuts? Or what do we want to do to increase funding to meet those needs?
I think going back to the comment I made earlier about the benefit for the career ladder, that this is just the opposite, that if we don't have the substitutes and we don't have the IAs, those kids are going to be negatively impacted, you know, and it kind of becomes a wash at that point. So.
Yeah, the caveat, just toss out there, if we're looking at pilot payments to be our saving grace. That's great, but if that place sells, from my understanding of the contract, the pilot can get renegotiated.
Well, we don't have the contract yet on any of it, so we will, that's one of the things that we'll try to close and make sure that that doesn't, that's transferable is what we want.
Definitely want that, because if it's non-transferable, we're just committed a whole bunch of tax dollars without having them coming in.
So back to Scott's original point, gotta start painting a picture. So I mean, we gotta.
See the big picture and then we can have a good conversation around it.
In the draft strategic plan survey, there is a question that is directly related to, do we have enough resources to support the type of learning environment that we want? And then there's an open-ended question about,
you know, what would be your recommendation? So I think that we can get some data from that. That would be extremely helpful in this conversation.
There's no IAs and substitute teachers. It's just critical for the learning environment for our students. So.
Right. So the point of this was just to give you an idea of what we're, you know, up against right now. And again, just to kind of paint a picture for you, we haven't outlined the strategies yet. We're gonna collaborate. Cabinet hasn't even seen all of this data that's in here because as we're preparing the board packet, I'm throwing this stuff together so that I can get you the information in time for you to review it. So we'll have more information. We'll have some time to collaborate before the next meeting, come up with some options, hopefully think outside the box a little bit, talk with our principals and our admin team. But didn't want you to be surprised in November if we come back with some asks.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional discussion on 11.7? Seeing none, we'll move on to 12.1, the catch-all miscellaneous.
Well, we have quite a bit in miscellaneous tonight. Something that's not listed is Michelle and I had the opportunity today, along with Carlo, to attend a celebration at NCC for technical education. Governor Parsons attended. I had the privilege of sitting with Governor Parsons and Commissioner Van Dieven at a table, and they spoke to the grant that hopefully they haven't been awarded it yet, but they've been promised an award of $30 million for an updated Northland Career Center. Now, the caveat to that is they have to match those funds, and so we toured the Career Center, looked at all the great things, saw many of our students there and their programs and what they're doing, and then also the plans for the new Career Center if they get that match. So it was an exciting day to be there. It was a good opportunity to see our kids in action, and there's many great opportunities out there for our students that are getting into a trade or to a career or a field that may not choose to attend college. And it's very exciting. I hope that they meet those funds because it'll mean greater things for our kids. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the facility that's over in Platte County.
correct. We are a sending school to that facility.
And we have students that participate in those.
That's right. Yeah, several students.
For
I don't
anybody
have the
that-
numbers to that.
Close to 55, I think, this year that are something.
For anybody that didn't know,
Yes,
they did, just to think that 30 million wasn't coming into our district, but it's
correct.
for this career center.
They're trying very hard to find a piece of land that they would be able to build the building partly, play, partly. Both EDCs are very involved in the advisory board, which I chair, and yeah, so, and there are a couple pieces of land that are options. So that's what they're working on right now, and it'll be exciting.
And there's 15 or 16 sending schools.
16 high schools.
Yep. So it's exciting. There is no school on October 27th, 28th due to parent teacher conferences. So just note that. The joint board meeting between the city and the school will be at City Hall on Tuesday, November 1st. And then our program evaluation will follow at 7 o'clock here in the office. So 6 o'clock for the first meeting, 7 o'clock for the second meeting, or as soon as we can get back here. MSBA conference is November 3rd through 5th at the Kansas City Convention Center. During that conference, I know Michelle's going, I'm attending, I'll be at the Safety Summit 2 days before. I know that you have people registered. Do you have any questions or anything about that? No. I spoke with my mentor this week and Dr. Coward, and we talked through the conference to give me an idea of what it is. And she had a couple of things. And one of those, I was speaking with Jeff and Susan. We talked about it would be nice if our board all looked alike and represented our district well. And so that leads you to my information I was seeking this morning for us to get you some spirit wear that we all would match in. And so I appreciate you being quick in your responses so we can get that in. So we can represent our district well in that setting. And then another idea that she gave would be on Saturday, because lunch is really challenging that day. I think they have concessions kind of that day, would be securing a place for lunch. So we may be working on that, securing a lunch reservation so we can have lunch together off site so we can avoid all that congestion, but I'll dig into that a little more and let you all know. Our annual audit with Westbrook and Company is scheduled for Tuesday, November 1st, Wednesday, November 2nd, and Friday, November 4th. I will need to head back Friday afternoon for the audit meeting, so I will have to leave the conference Friday afternoon. The sign up for the turkeys has been sent out to staff. The board will distribute those on Wednesday, December 14th at the end of the school day. We talked about that at the last meeting. And then our board meetings that evening. I think Denny brought up, it would be nice to have dinner together. Karen and I were brainstorming some ideas. And this is just an open invitation if you'd like to come to my house right after that, since I live in town. Karen's cooking part of it and I'll cook the other. And I think Michelle's even offered we'll have the cabinet and the board if you would like to come over. I know it's 2 days before the wedding, so you just can ignore wedding things, but you're invited to my home. We'll have some lasagna and salad and cheesecake. And that will fit in that hour or so between turkeys and the board meeting. So you can think on that and let me know if that's something. And well, my house will be decorated and ready to go. So, and this wonderful woman over here is offered, and Michelle too. So if we just have the cabinet, you all will just be informal.
So I just show up and eat?
We're gonna hand out turkeys. You show up and eat.
You have to talk.
Deal.
And then you get to come to the board meeting. So if you don't like the idea, you're not gonna hurt my feelings, but if you would like to, I would love to host you. So
For the turkeys for next year, since they're already opted in or out, can we have another option
in case someone doesn't like turkey or
Someone
doesn't? Because if they're already, I want to make sure that they.
we tried it with him one year and it was a major fail.
What about like a
So I don't know.
business gift card or something? Can we do?
You do gift cards.
Okay. Whoops, rookie.
No gift card.
Sorry, auditor, but.
So we have, we've tried other things. I don't think they went over well. And I mean, that's why it was like, well, either like it or I don't know. I've never heard, Ms. Logan, have you heard of anything else or?
Yes, we've
Been here a while.
Okay.
Oh, you guys are-
No, we-
Okay.
I just, next
we
year,
can
let's
certainly
have
throw
another
out some
option.
ideas.
I like turkey, but I know not everyone does.
Okay. And let me go through my list here. The district holiday open house is Wednesday, December 7th. We haven't even sent the invites out yet, so hot off the press. There's December 7th from 2:30 to 5. And then kind of backing up in November again, our walkthroughs are scheduled for November 14th. So let me know if you can attend those. I went ahead and put a schedule out. That date was picked at the beginning of the year, so nope for you. Okay.
I can't come either.
When is it?
Well, and if nobody can attend, we can reschedule. The 14th, yep. We can reschedule it. I know we just had picked those dates in the beginning of the year, so. Do we want to avoid November? Do you want me to do earlier in November?
Do you like having all of us together, or do we kind of?
We usually
We're all
all go
together.
together. Mhm.
Then when we get to a building, I mean, there's a variety of things we can do. If someone wants to sit in a classroom for an extended period of time, we can, let you know, teacher that would be open to that. Otherwise, you can just kind of go in and out of classrooms and see a variety of things. Yeah, you can have to make.
Since I know he's watching, because I've already looked at the list, Russell used to find the littlest chair he could sit in and spend an hour watching
I mean.
some of the smaller classes.
Looking at the schedule, the first week in November is out because of the MSBA convention. Last week's your interviews. You get into December and that gets pretty hectic. So do we push it off? Or we already have one scheduled for the spring? Maybe we only do one this year.
You have one scheduled.
Well, we're handing out turkeys on December 15th.
Yes, I know that
And we're having.
2:30.
you are. And I know we have some other things planned for that day already for
Okay.
central office.
And that would be final.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, we will try. I'll look at the date for the spring and maybe we can plan it early spring and that way maybe we just have one this year. Okay, so I'll strike that off the list. It is a shame. Michelle and I have been completing walkthroughs. We've been through every building except for Eagle, which we had to reschedule actually because of substitutes. But it's been nice.
But we can always arrange if an individual wants to spend some time, we're happy to help arrange that so that you can visit a building if we do end up.
I don't know, but it's fun as a group.
It is.
I don't know, what, are we just stuck that week doesn't work at all?
Well, it's strategic planning. We said it for 2 days at the end of that week, so there's not much time.
And the following week prior to the break?
The following week is the break.
Oh, the whole week's.
And then the last week are interviews for you all.
Don't they get out midday Tuesday?
No, they go full day.
Yeah, the following week, but our portion of the interviews won't be till that evening.
Okay, I mean, I know that was just some feedback I heard. I don't mind whatever you all want to do.
What do we think? I'd be fine with that week.
Which week are we talking exactly?
That interview week.
Is there a date? I know,
Might be all that makes that time. One thing I'm gonna take vacation. Part of the interviews, so. I'll be there that week.
What about the 30th or the 1st?
but we're currently not scheduled to have anything on the 1st and might be schooled out at that point. So could we do it on one of the days where we're here anyway? The 28th, 29th, 30th?
We have aspiring principals on the 29th, so that would not. What's that?
Let's see, that would be, let me tell you exactly who's on for that one. I know Kim is, or that's only.
That may be okay.
That might be okay. Kim is on, and Robert, I think you might be on, but let me. pull it up.
29th or 30th. Gotta avoid your Mondays.
I could do the 30th, but don't plan around me, please. I have got to do this in the past. It is good, but I've done it, so if I'm not there, it's not there. It's hard work, want to do it.
On the 29th, we are scheduled to have a panel, which would include district administration in the morning and the kids in the afternoon. So the 30th would be better.
30th.
30th.
Any objections?
November 30.
Hearing none.
Good
If
suggestion.
I'm taking vacation, it's.
Might as well do it, huh?
So.
Okay, November 30th. Same schedule then that I put on there. I might have to adjust it because of the late start. So let me adjust it and I'll just resend a new schedule. I don't know.
Thinking.
I put a lunch hour in there. I thought we might lose some time just transitioning, but I just built in a gap in the middle of the day, so I'll adjust the time. Okay. And I don't think I have any other. Please let us know about dinner if you want to do that or not.
And then other than that,
You had me at lasagna.
okay.
I hope it's like frozen.
No, Karen's making it. Karen's making the lasagna. I'm making you a cheesecake.
No, if I'm going. Oh, frozen
What are
lasagna.
you contributing?
All right, seeing we've got 20 minutes before 10 o'clock. Any other topics? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, and do I have a third? Hearing no further discussion, please vote.
Okay, to close down now.
Not yet. 7-0, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.